We have new details about the performance and quality of Hellblade 2 thanks to Digital Foundry, and I have to say, it's far more disappointing than exciting. Despite how enthralled Digital Foundry and others might be with Ninja Theory and what they're doing with the Unreal 5 engine, when I did the show about 30 FPS just about a week ago, I said that the game was being defended as if it was a glorified Unreal 5 tech demo, and the breakdown from Digital Foundry confirms some of those fears. And if you actually made it this far without running to the comments to claim that I'm just hating on Xbox, I have played through the first Hellblade 3 different times. I'm only missing one trophy because I always miss the one rune in the one section, but this is my all-time favorite game, okay? I believe it is the most complete piece of gaming as art that we have. I've said this very many times. When you attempt to make a video game and you view it as a piece of art, I believe that the first Hellblade is the most complete package. And everything I'm hearing about the game's performance from the Digital Foundry breakdown is exactly what I do not want from a game or a game developer. But I will say there is this silver lining that, I'm going to make some predictions about where this game lands. But before I do that, I want to walk through sort of like what has happened, right? We've had trailers, we've had the game show up and look different, over time. Then there was the announcement about 30 FPS from the previews, and then there was my response and coverage as well as the public's response to this. I'm going to lean on Eurogamer. They actually pulled out highlights from the Digital Foundry video about the latest footage from Hellblade 2, and I'm going to give you my position on this because some fans are super excited, and I'm going to tell you why I am not excited. So first, just a very quick backstory because I'm showing you one of the trailers, right? I'm actually starting to regret doing an entire show where I defended the gameplay trailer with like the notorious red scenes with the chopped up clips of combat. This trailer here where people started noticing it didn't quite look like the other trailer that I was just showing you a second ago. The more and more I've thought about it, the more concern I have about just how inconsistent all of the footage of this game has looked. It went from looking like a fully rendered cinematic form of simulated gameplay that was too good to be true when they attacked the giant in the cave to a more grounded feeling with still very realistic faces and realistic environments. But it still felt like they were very hesitant to show us uncut or raw gameplay. And I did a little bit of research, and I'm just going to add this into the monologue. The original announcement trailer for Hellblade 2 in 2019 said that the game was being built for the Xbox Series X. I have to say that simply is not true. It's very clear this was not built for the Xbox Series X. And you also have to remember when that 2019 Hellblade 2 trailer landed, it was basically one of the big titles that we were seeing for like the Project Scarlet and the Series X. Everything we were hearing about this new console that Xbox was going to be making, and this is what we get. We get a game that is, in my estimation, a tech demo for the Unreal 5 engine that was not custom built for the Series X. So all of this time, I've continued to feel like, why won't they just show us raw, uncut gameplay? Why is it so choppy? Why does it all look so different? Most of that, to me, was just them learning how to leverage Unreal. I thought, okay, some of those first trailers were a little crazy, maybe a little too good to be true. I still maintain that this is not raw gameplay. I think that this is an actually fully rendered environment where they're not at all, going to give you this experience in the game. I don't even know if this sequence is going to be in the game. It seems too big from what we're hearing from the previews and the breakdowns about performance. This entire exchange where they go into this cave and take out this monstrous, giant guy, and then they end up back out on the beach. I don't even know if it's going to be in the game, and if it does, I'm curious how it will actually run. And this close to the launch, I think we're finally getting some decent analysis because we actually have some preview footage that is, being broken down. And I have to say, the public response to the 30 FPS announcement has been nothing short of embarrassing, to the point that responding to some of the cliches, it's just not worth my time. 30 FPS is more cinematic, expecting 60 FPS from the console is not reasonable, and, if you want 60 FPS, buy a PC. I'm not even going to respond to these statements anymore. It's not worth my time and energy. They're intellectually bankrupt, okay? You're better off not even reacting to this stuff anymore. It's just parroted by people who can't think for themselves. So now let's look at what Digital Foundry has to say about the gameplay. So Eurogamer provided a very helpful breakdown of the Digital Foundry preview. They basically did a Hellblade 2 preview reaction. Now, the article is entitled Hellblade 2 looks like the most visually ambitious Unreal Engine 5 game yet, and then the Digital Foundry YouTube title is Hellblade 2 preview reaction, the new state-of-the-art for Unreal Engine 5, ? So they're kind of asking the question. Now, the first thing they start with is the visuals in Senua's face. They say, in terms of visual features, Hellblade 2 is clearly pushing some of the, really impressive tech. Senua's meta-human-derived facial rendering is the extreme strong point here, up there with the absolute best in video games. Now, I actually completely agree with this. I don't think anybody would look at the footage coming from Hellblade 2 from the beginning, even to now. There have been some downgrades, but even now, she looks fantastic. It looks like she's really in the game. Melina Juergens brings an intensity and a gravity to the character of Senua, and the tech utilized for her facial capture and the rendering is undeniably the best that I have seen. They quite literally have put her into the game. Now, Eurogamer spends a good amount of time praising the lighting and the small elements like pebbles and good use of lumen and indirect lighting effects. They did seem to indicate that the jury is currently out on reflections, since there is evidence of a mixture of techniques that have been utilized across the various footage and trailers. Now, high praise was given for the mocap of the animations in combat, which is something that we actually heard from the previews, and they did highlight that Ninja Theory has opted to do the pause of the animation when an attack connects. Now, a lot of people didn't realize that's actually in the first game. Now, when you're watching a trailer and you see those frame pauses in combat, it can be pretty jarring, but when you're playing, it actually adds some impact and weight to the hits. That does this in Hellblade 1. This is not new. It threw people off. They're like, the combat looks choppy. Now, this animation pause also happens whenever you land the hit on an enemy. It's not just when you swing. I actually think it gives it a nice feel. Now, this is when they start talking about image quality. So Eurogamer is going to talk about image quality here, and they say the following. In the high-quality preview footage that we have, the game remains quite soft, especially in motion, though a lot of this seems to stem from very aggressive post-processing. And this is when certain words are going to start showing up that many of us in the gaming world are starting to loathe. They say the following. They say, the usual suspects show up here: motion blur, depth of field, chromatic aberration, and film grain, which do end up blurring the image somewhat. Now, these are all things that you get when you push the visuals so much that you have to drop the FPS to 30, which many will say is necessary when running 30 FPS, right? Well, you need motion blur or it's going to look terrible, right? In my experience, it actually heightens the sense of blurriness or the muddiness of the experience. In other words, this is exactly what I feared, all right? A game that is so visually heavy and intense that blurring is basically a requirement, which negates all your pretty graphics if you have to turn on all this stuff that makes it look like a blurry, muddy mess. I don't think you've achieved anything. I think you've basically tied an anchor around the game at that point. Now, Eurogamer concludes this section by saying, Hellblade 2 is unique here in that these effects seem unusually high quality and unusually pervasive. The film grain in particular seems quite harsh, so hopefully the game ships with an option to disable it. I wouldn't hold my breath for a lot of options on the console. Now, image quality was not the only issue here, okay? Eurogamer's also talking about the softness and how that does sometimes show up in cinematics. He says, I think a little bit of softness, especially in cinematics, is perfectly fine, and the game does have a filmic look at times as a result. However, there are also some image breakup in motion, which is most noticeable in the action sequences from the preview. This, again, reinforces my concern. Immersion is vitally important for Hellblade. It's the selling point of the first game. Immersion is the key, and if the action and the combat experience suffers because of this overemphasis on visuals, well, that's going to be to the game's detriment. This might also be why we're hearing that combat is always going to be one-on-one, which that could be great if it leads to like really, really tight, challenging fights and really, really good boss fights. I actually think the best fight from the first game is Valravn, because you have these really great opportunities for parries and it's just you and one enemy. But there were great sequences where there were lots of enemies in Hellblade 1, especially especially near the back half of the game when you're down in like the water and everything's on fire. You're basically in hell. Like, those sequences are incredibly impactful because there's so many enemies coming toward you and so many enemies that you have to manage. And if that's been stripped away because they decided to go crazy with the graphics, then you have actually, I think, lowered the game's quality. You haven't expanded it at all. And apparently some of the issues show up in gameplay with that ability that Senua has where she can sort of slow down time. They said the following: Hellblade has a blurred, slightly artifact-prone quality in fast motion, which holds especially true when Senua activates an ability to slow down time, which appears to turn off the motion blur that otherwise helps hide some of those artifacts. Now, this is somewhat compounding as a concern, because let's say they do let you turn off motion blur. Well, according to this, that's when all those artifacts are going to show up. So you're basically, if you disable motion blur, you have to choose between two bad options. Like, is the game going to look blurry, or is it going to have all this artifacting? Then we get to resolution, which is obviously making the rounds on Twitter. I know you've seen the tweets. People are, I think, rightly being critical, because many people assumed we would be getting a game that is 4K, right? If it's going to be 30 FPS, I feel like I'd be staring down the barrel of a 4K game, right? No, wrong. It's actually more in the range of 1440, and it will dip below that down to, close to 1080, because the resolution is dynamic. You're also dealing with letterbox. You see those great black bars in the top and the bottom behind me? Those will be there all of the time when you are playing Hellblade II. The last concern put forth by Eurogamer is about the volumetric effects, and they say the following: another image quality concern resolves around the resolution of the volumetric effects. The low-lying fog seen in the footage has artifacting issues that suffers from visibly low-res rendering. These effects look good, I think, but they don't hold up as well with close scrutiny. Again, reducing resolution of volumetric effects is not specific to Hellblade 2. Many games do it. Now, to me, this is the type of thing that generally goes unnoticed, right? I'm not saying this is a deal breaker, but given everything we've already discussed, it's just one more log in the fire. The author can't help but wonder why we didn't get a 40 FPS 120 Hz mode, why that wouldn't have been offered, which means we could be looking at another Starfield. It was proven that a 60 FPS mode would have worked for Starfield on the Xbox Series X, but this is a possible parity clause with first-party Xbox games, that you can't launch a first-party game and have 60 FPS or maybe even a 40 FPS mode for the Series X if you can't do it for the S. If a game launches at 30, it's 30 on both. If they do a 60 FPS update, both of them get it. It wouldn't surprise me at all if first-party studios are being told you can't ship with better things on the Series X, which is honestly stupid given the marketing, but we all know Xbox privated their video because they lied about the differences between the Series X and the Series S and the performance that we would be getting. Just like, well, maybe they should private the 2019 Hellblade II announcement trailer, since it says it was built for the Series X, and that's turning out not to be true either. Great track record here, Xbox. Just keep setting videos to private so that maybe we'll finally forget how many lies you told about this generation. So the Series S may be indeed a contributing culprit in the room. Once again, I don't believe it's the primary cause, to be sure. It's abundantly evident that they made creative and art direction choices for this game that is weighing it down. I also think this paragraph is worth reading because I resonate with what feels like a scope change from the early trailers. If you watch the early trailers, especially the one that I've been showing you where they go into the cave and then they're on the beach and it's this big open space. If you go back to the original trailer where there's like all these people around and she's singing and it feels like it's going to be like a larger game compared to the first game, well, this is not the case according to the people who have been looking at these previews. At least that's not what it seems like. This is the paragraph. Judging by the footage, the only real concession in Hellblade 2 comes down to the size and scope of the game. Hellblade 2 is a smaller title than a lot of its contemporaries, with a structure that looks similar to the first game. Early trailers suggested something a bit broader might be on the cards, but more recent showings, including the latest preview footage, seems to show a game that is more tightly constrained, built around narrow passageways, linear paths, and one-on-one duels. Judging from the previews from other outlets, the final game may largely stick to this pattern, which would show some restraint relative to the other popular single-player action titles. See this swooping camera shot we're getting? See this wide-open beach scene? If this makes it into the final game, I'll honestly be shocked after everything we're hearing about the performance and the structure of this game. Now, this obviously makes me wonder if there's other things that had to change as well. This cave sequence could be seen as, I don't know, just promotional material and it never lands, right? Will that ever even be in the game? Will anything that we originally thought happened, maybe they stripped this thing down. Remember how much they removed from Halo Infinite before it launched? Maybe this game had to gut a lot of its creative choices because in 2019, maybe they thought they were only going to be building this for the Series X. I don't really know. I'm starting to doubt that the game ever features instances of the scope and the size that we've seen in trailers like this. The author also expressed concern and interest in how is this game even going to run on the Series S, and the following quote is a great transition into giving you my thoughts and my position on this. This is what Eurogamer says. The game's image quality, at least judging from this preview, is a little mixed, though I think expectations should probably be adjusted given the quality and the character and the graphics on display. This is a narrative-focused cinematic title, perhaps similar to the Order 1886, and it isn't aiming for a super sharp, super clear image. Well, you can frickin' say that again. It certainly isn't going for a super sharp, super clear image with dynamic resolution, blurring effects, artifacts, and fast motions. Apparently not a good idea when you're playing this game. So this is a great runway. Let me tell you what I think about this. Yes, I am not happy about what's happening to one of, if not my all-time favorite game's sequel and the most anticipated game for me in 2024. So much of what I read in the Eurogamer article, it's all of the things that I hate in gaming. It's all the things that I turn off in the settings. I don't want to deal with these things. After 4 years of playing next-gen games, I have no tolerance for any of this. Motion blur, an emphasis on lighting or higher resolution at the cost of performance. Why? Why are we still doing this? This is a trope. This is a cliche. It's a stereotype. No one cares how pretty your game is if it doesn't run well, okay? This isn't Screenshot Simulator. It's supposed to be a video game. I said this on Twitter, and I will say it again now. It sounds like they built a really good Unreal Engine 5 tech demo, and I've never hoped that I was wrong more than I hope I'm wrong now. I really hope that is not the case. Just listen to the final line of the Eurogamer article. This could be the very best looking Unreal Engine 5 title out there when it releases on May 21st, which is no small feat. Well, this could be great. But it could also be the only thing that anybody celebrates about the game. Being the best looking game doesn't really matter if the game doesn't run well. If it looks like a blurry, muddy mess the minute you move, or if you get into an action sequence, since that's one of the primary selling points of the first game is the sense of threat that you might die, that you might permanently die. The bravery, the courage, the artistic vision of the first game to lie to you. You think you can actually permanently die, but you can't. They actually manipulate the psychosis and the psychology of the player from moment one. But I'm going to be playing a game that apparently gets choppy and artifacty and blurry when I get into one-on-one combat. Well, sign me up for that. I can't wait to play that. Remember that the article talked about the fast moment, the action. All those things are when things start to chop up and fall apart. That's a huge immersion breaker. It happened in the reverse in Final Fantasy 16. The action and the combat was smooth, and then when I went to a town or wanted to explore, it was a stuttering mess. It's going to be hard to get immersed in fast action and combat when things are shaky and less consistent. So let me give you a prediction here, and this is where I'm going to try to give a silver lining, okay? Because I am very passionate about this game. I have very strong opinions about Hellblade, and seeing the sequel come out the way that it's coming out right now is incredibly concerning. But I actually think the story will be great. Why? Well, because the writers and the actors, they're going to want a synergistic relationship between what they have done and all of this focus on production. Essentially, I am trusting the priorities that are actually bothering me, okay? This overemphasis on production. I hope that motivated the acting and the writing to just be absolutely top-notch, which I also think means that the audio quality is going to once again be superb, okay? Hellblade isn't Hellblade without fantastic fantastic audio. And if you played the first game without headphones, you robbed yourself of one of the best gaming experiences available in the market. Go back and replay it with headphones, okay? If you've never played the first game, play it with headphones or you're a fool. I also think Melina Juergens will deliver an award-winning performance. She's had more time to hone her craft, to improve as an actor. And again, the production focus likely elevated her work and her contribution to this project. So I do think we're going to get a fantastic story with great acting, brilliant audio quality, and there's going to be that dark, macabre, creative storytelling like we saw in the first game. But the focus on production will hurt things like combat. It's going to hurt things like performance, which I truly hope does not hurt the immersion or the delivery of this story. Hellblade is an important game to me. And the sequel, which was very clearly hinted at even in the closing scene of the first game, it's something that I've been waiting for a long time. So I'm concerned and I'm really disappointed at what I'm hearing. I'm still holding out hope that they just made a great game and it just might have focused on the wrong things, so it really hurt the Xbox Series X owners, one last time this generation. But if I can get a great experience on PC, I'll be happy with that. But that's just what I think. What do you think?